Is Kirkland whiskey just as good, if not better, than 1792? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So before me today, we've got two very interesting and very related bottles. On the one hand, we've got the Kirkland Signature Bottled and Bond whiskey, which is a product of Costco, but is actually distilled and produced by Barton 1792 Distillery. That's where they source from, which is why we're comparing it directly to the Barton 1792 Bottled and Bond bourbon, their own release of their own distillate. So the question is really, what are the differences here? What's the different value that you're getting from each of these bottles? So we're gonna dive in, we're gonna compare them blind to really figure that out. Full rundown though, you've got the Kirkland Signature Bottled and Bond, which both of these are at 100 proof. They're at least 4 years old. Kirkland Signature is probably on the younger side, and the 1792 Bottled and Bond, rumor has it that that's a little older, maybe around 7 or 8 years old. It's also a question of price because the Kirkland is right around $25 and comes in a liter, so much more affordable and budget friendly. It is kind of an annual release from Costco, so not widely available all of the time. The 1792 Bottled in Bond is pricier. I think this one MSRP is supposed to be around 35 to 40 bucks, but most likely you might see it marked up, and this one is pretty limited in my experience. So the question is, can the Kirkland basically take down its counterpart in the 1792 Bottled in Bond? Is 1792 really holding back their better, awesome whiskey for their own brand and giving Costco the lesser stuff? We're all gonna kind of discover that together as we taste both of these head to head. All right, let me move these bottles just a little bit out of the way. We'll get the whiskey front and center, and we'll begin. We'll just call this glass here glass A, and we're gonna dive in and just evaluate these on the nose, palate, and finish. Just before we do that, I do wanna say, if you're enjoying all the content coming out of the channel, would love to have you aboard as a subscriber for the rest of 2023 and beyond. While you're at it, hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos like this, more head-to-head comparisons, put down in the comments below what whiskeys you'd like to see paired up against each other. All right, let's dive in. Glass A on the nose. Ooh, nice and sweet right off the bat. A little bit of an ethanol kick, but not much. I'm getting brown sugar and banana sweetness. Cherry, bright red cherry as well. Really nice. A little bit of an oak presence. Yeah, really nice and sweet. Vanilla in there as well. Oak. Maybe the tiniest bit of like a cinnamon spice as well. Nice. Let's compare that to glass B on the nose. Okay, it is slightly different. You can tell they're very similar. This one to me goes a little bit darker, not quite as sweet and fresh right off the bat. A little more darker vanilla. Some slightly richer brown sugar notes. Interesting. A little bit of an ethanol kick here too. Maybe like a chocolatey touch as well. All right. Glass A definitely came forward with its sweetness, and glass B has a little bit more rounder, maybe bass tones to it, but they're both similar in DNA. So I think the palate here is going to give us a lot more information. If I had to pick a direction though, I might go with glass B on the nose. I feel like that slightly more dark bass tones is really nice, gives it more depth. All right, tasting glass A here. Cheers. Nice. That's good. It's a little bit more spicy than I was anticipating, so it's got a good burst of that in the middle palate. The beginning though was sweeter with some of that vanilla, banana kind of notes, some cherry as well. And I'm still getting cherry. It's got a nice long finish. There's more sweetness toward the back end as well, so the spice rises up in the middle, gets a little, maybe a little oaky, but then the back end of the palate is this touch of banana, good brown sugar, good cherry, a little bit of that oak staying around. I especially like the richness of the brown sugar and cherry coming throughout this sip. So really, really solid. Let me get some water and then we'll move on to Glass B. All right, let's try Glass B on the palate. Direct comparison here. Cheers. That's also pretty good. That one is maybe a touch thinner and maybe a touch less depth actually, even though the nose gave me more depth. I feel like the palate didn't have as rich of tones. It's still got the same cherry, banana, spicy quality to it overall, but maybe just a touch less brown sugar and oak richness to me. So very solid whiskey. Got maybe a touch more of a grain note as well. So overall, I think that one maybe was a little deceptive on the nose. It didn't follow through quite as much as I wanted it to on the palate. But we're gonna go back in the other order now just to make sure that everything's fair and square and compare them the other way, and we'll see if we get different flavors and what ultimately comes out on top. All right, let's go back in reverse order now. This should give us more information and be a fairer shake as we compare. Cheers, going back to Glass B. Wow, that's pretty good. Definitely enjoyed that sip quite a bit more. Now it's grabbed on my palate a little bit more. Got more good vanillas, a little bit of a touch of oak. Brown sugar came through stronger on that sip. The cherry and banana core there though, the fruitiness and the sweetness is still there. Yeah, that's very, very solid. I mean, it's not all that different from Glass A. I will say it's a touch more aggressive and it doesn't feel as rounded on the palate. Let's go back to Glass A though. We'll do one more full comparison, should give us the most information. Let me get some water. All right, diving right back into Glass A. Yeah, I think the finish is the best part of this one. It is long, lingering, sweet cherry, a little bit of banana, some oak and brown sugar. My mouth's kind of watering just sitting here talking. It's good. The experience here is a little bit less intense. It's a little bit more rounded. So there's like a rich brown sugar, good cherry, good oak, maybe even something approaching like an espresso bean kind of tannicness. Not too overwhelming, but just a touch of it in there, and then it's balanced out and the finish goes real sweet with that cherry and banana note really lingering for quite a while. Spice kicks up in the middle but isn't too overwhelming, and it's really nice. Both of these are super similar in a lot of ways. You can tell they're intimately related, and I'm going to do a little bit more comparison just for due diligence sake to go back and forth. I'll fast forward through that for you guys so we can get to what ultimately comes out on top. All right, everybody, I think I've got this figured out, my preference here, my order. And again, this was pretty close. I do not think that these are light years different. It doesn't feel like 1792 has clearly differentiated one from the other in terms of this is going to be super high quality, this is going to be super low quality. So whatever ends up happening here, keep that in mind. What I would say, how I would evaluate this, and what ultimately wins for me today is Glass A. So Glass A, surprisingly, I don't like the nose as much as I like Glass B. I actually like the nose on Glass B quite a bit. It's a little more robust and jumps out of the glass a little bit more, so that helps it. But I got more of these darker chocolate base tones on the nose. It was almost an entirely reverse story on the palate though. The palate of Glass A really came through as a more refined, deeper base note experience. And The palate of Glass A I would consider better than Glass B, and the finish of Glass A especially was like top notch, and Glass B was just okay. So for me, what really separates these two is that finish and Glass A's ability to linger and have staying power. Really, really appreciate that about Glass A. So ultimately, I went with that one. It is interesting though that the nose and the palate kind of flipped roles. So that threw me for a loop for a bit, but the palate of Glass A and the finish just put it over the top, though Glass B certainly did not fall flat today. Let's see what it is. I have my suspicions, but let's confirm and let's see. Glass B is, yep, that's the signature Bottled and Bond whiskey from Kirkland brand, and then that makes Glass A our winner, the 1792 Bottled in Bond. Again, I would just say that surprisingly, didn't really love the nose on this one. I would give the nose a mediocre score overall and a higher score to the nose of the Bottled in Bond from Kirkland. But when it came to the palate and the finish, 1792 Bottled in Bond just impressed me a lot, had more staying power, more rounded experience. This one, maybe it's a little bit younger, just had a little bit more of an aggressive and thinner palate. So again, this is very solid whiskey, and when you factor in price and availability, they're not that different and they're not that far off in terms of ones I would prefer to have in my collection. I would say though, it just feels like this Kirkland Bottled in Bond exists on that slightly younger, higher ethanol, thinner plane, and then the 1792 Bottled in Bond just gives like a little extra layers of depth, especially on the palate and finish. All right, everybody, that's going to be it. That's my comparison. Didn't end up being a different result than what I was expecting, but the fact that these were not that far off, and I had to do quite a bit of back and forth to really pick out the extreme ends of the differences and the subtleties of the differences, it goes to show that the Kirkland Bottled in Bond is quite good too. Okay, let me know in the comments below, everybody, if you've been able to do this comparison yourself. I'd really be interested to know what came out on top for you. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.